Hello, and welcome to this semi-live recording about Camp Reset 2023. If you're watching this, the intention of this video is to give folks an idea about the opportunity to join the Camp Reset Organizing Collective. If you're interested in camp, not interested in the collective, you can still watch this video, but if it's helpful to know, we are going to release another similar video in a little while that's intended for people who are just broadly interested in what happens at Camp Reset. But again, this video is for people who are interested in the collective to provide a little bit more information about it. My name is Ado Dalla. You may call me Dill. And in the Reset world, you can also call me Moonlight. And I'm going to pass it on to my fellow co-hosts here to introduce themselves as well.
So I'll go next. My name's Jen. I'm known at camp as Rain.
All right, my turn. Were you going to say something, Dale?
I was gonna try and be a better facilitator by saying somebody else go next. T-Money, you go next.
All right, cool. Whoops. All right, let's start again. Tony, in the Reset verse, I am T-Money, aka $7, aka. No, let's just stop there for now. That's it for now.
Excellent. Welcome, PT.
Hey y'all, my name is Wilson and my nickname is Primetime, sometimes aka PT. And yeah, let's get going into this info session.
Thank you. And if you might not have already noticed, this is a pretty casual recording. We haven't practiced it yet, and we committed to leaning into a raw and real vibe. So you might notice at times you'll get the vibe that we're unrehearsed, we assume. And hopefully that works for you, because it's definitely working for us right now. I should mention as well, just before we jump in, just for context around who we are in relation to Reset. I myself am one of the co-founders of Reset, and these three lovely people that are sharing the stage with me today are this year's Camp Reset 2023 co-chairs. Is this where the confetti comes?
In the edit, if we did actually do an edit, this is where all the sparklers and celebration would be dropping. And yes,
we're not actually doing an edit, so if you're watching this, please imagine confetti. Cool. So let's get into this. I'm gonna share a slide. Oh yeah, there you go. I'm gonna go share this deck we got here. So hopefully right now what you see is the presentation that we've put together. We're going to do our best to keep this presentation within half an hour, and I'm going to get straight into it right now. As mentioned, if you're watching this, it's because we are trying to share more information for folks who are interested in joining the Camp Reset Collective. The Camp Reset Collective is a group of volunteers who every year are the leaders and co-creators of Camp Reset. We do invite members of our community to volunteer in other capacities while at camp. So there are actually many ways that you can contribute towards camp. But specifically, there's a group of folks who at this point literally are starting to doing the planning for camp. And we are very fortunate that I believe 9 out of 12 of our folks from our collective from last year are returning. And that this year we're actually looking to recruit for 3 roles: the Director of Community, the Director of Design, and the Director of Operations. For those of you who are new to Reset, and this is kind of your first touch point, just very quickly, we started in 2015 as a nonprofit social enterprise, and we started as camp. Since then, we have evolved and integrated new activities and services into what we do, including where myself and T-Money are right now, which is the Reset Center, located in Little Jamaica, Toronto. The center, along with camp, is driven by this vision that we have to inspire the world to play more. And our mission is to create playful cultures and communities because we believe play is an underrepresented solution to individual and collective wellness. Everything we do has the through line of play, including and especially camp. Camp started in 2015, as I mentioned, and it was co-founded by 8 individuals. I want to give a shout out to all of them now if they're seeing this. Hema, Nagin, Andrew, Vlad, Antonio, Emma, and Ria. And of course, it was also to the founding community, the intrepid campers who joined us in 2015, between 2015 and 2020, to kind of create the foundational years of Reset. We started as an 80-person camp, an idea that first originated, actually, this idea of adult digital detox summer camps first originated in California through an organization called Camp Grounded. And we really like the idea of bringing something like that up to closer to Toronto, where we were all located, or where we all are located. And we organized camp for 5 years until, of course, the pandemic happened, and we had to recalibrate, to say the least. It takes some time, but camp is back, and last year was the first year that we were back after a brief hiatus due to the pandemic. And of course, we're all here today to talk about Camp Reset 2023, which is back at Camp Walden. We're going to share a little bit more about Camp Walden in a minute, but this is, in this backdrop of the slide, is actually an actual shot of Walden, and one of the places where our camp and programming happens each year. High-level camp specs. Camp is happening this year from September 14th to 17th. Last year, camp was 200 folks. This year, we're increasing the size to 250 to 300. Folks at camp had the opportunity to either sleep in cabins and or tents, and we have a sliding ticket scale option. New to this year, actually, is we're introducing some private cabins, which we have access to, which we didn't last year. Camp is an environment which you may know is a digital detox experience. What that means is that people check their tech at the beginning. There's no phones at camp, there's no laptops, there's no tablets. We do use devices to do things like run our programming, such as like play music. So there are some devices used by people who are programming and organizing, but every one of the campers there does not have their personal device. I'm going to put an asterisk on cameras and come back to that later in our presentation. But some of the other tenets of camp is that we don't talk about work, and that our design of our programming is oriented around this idea of just play. Last year, one of the biggest things that we did differently is also incorporate a lot of rest-based elements to our weekend. Camp Reset is organized by the collective, as I mentioned, but we're also supported by our incredible board and advisors at Camp Walden and our camp community. So with that backdrop here, I'm going to pass it a little bit over to everybody else here, and maybe just a starting question to the three of you. What was why are you motivated to be camp co-chairs this year? What's interested you in the role and the opportunity? Why are you here? And I'm going to pass it to Rain first.
Yeah. So I just completely fell in love with this organization. My initial interest was going through the website and reading about the values, reading about just play and rest being kind of the central theme to what Reset does, and I fell in love with it. And honestly, I watched the info session myself last year, and I just thought these folks look just so lovely and really interesting. And so, yeah, I was excited about getting involved. And in terms of co-chairing this year, there's something really wonderful about the collaboration piece. And so many of our collective from last year came back. And I think this is a really beautiful effort to build support for the collective and to make sure that we are running smoothly and building an experience for our campers that is unmatched.
Awesome. Thanks, Rain. Primetime, over to you.
Thank you so much. I started out as a camper in 2015, the first year, and I've progressed through as a staff member, as slowly kind of joining the team, and then slowly becoming a head of like production, director of production. And now it just feels like the right time to step into a bit more of a leadership role, stepping into my own leadership on inside and outside of Reset as well. And so I just want to provide some stewardship and help the team grow and also be able to provide that institutional knowledge over the last few years and help the next group come in and slowly phase myself out as well.
Thanks for sharing that. T-Money, over to you.
Thanks, Moonlight. Before I start, I'm gonna see if I can add my name right there. So that's T Money with a $sign. Sorry. To answer your question, it's gonna be a bit of a mixed answer, which I can take from Rain over here and PT. Like Rain, I found Reset last year, or rather, as someone had explained to me recently, Reset found me. And ever since becoming involved with the organization and meeting the community that really forms this organization, I fell in love with the spirit, the value, the mission, the vision, and I wanted to put my hand up again. And so this time around, I wanted to express my interest in a leadership role in here, and I am very lucky to be working with a beautiful group of human beings right in front of you, and the rest of the collective alongside as well. And yeah, I'm just excited. I have so many visions that I can think of that we can do for camp this year, and I'm just excited to execute the whole thing and have a great year ahead of us. Yeah, that sounded a little corporate in the end, but I apologize.
Thanks for sharing. T-Money, when you mentioned your name, you actually reminded me of something. I was a little bit nervous at the beginning. We hit record, so there's a couple of kind of things that I wanted to mention. One thing just about our names. When I introduced myself, I didn't share pronouns, and we want to make sure we're modeling culture or modeling a culture where we do share our pronouns. And so just to reintroduce myself, my name is Moonlight, and my pronouns are he and they. And Jen?
Yeah, my name is Jen, and my pronouns are she and her.
Thank you. PT?
Hi, Prime Time and he and him.
Thanks. T-Money?
My name is Tony, aka T-Money, he, him.
Thanks, everyone. And then also, just in the spirit of this being like a raw and real sharing, I also forgot to mention that PT right now is out of town at work and may be called at any time to lead production on something. So we have you for as long as we do. Thanks so much for being here and with us. Okay, so now I'm going to go back another question specifically for yourselves, Rain and T-Money. I'm curious to know, both of you hadn't even gone to camp before joining the collective last year. You went from zero to organizer, and just curious to know, was that challenging? We really want to make sure that we're encouraging people who haven't attended camp that they feel like they can apply. And so just curious to know what you could share about, how easy or hard that was to join the collective without going to camp. And T-Money, we're going to start with you this time.
Okay, cool. Seriously, I found Reset over social media, or rather Reset found me on social media. It was tough. I recall the beginning of it. It's roughly around this time of the year when I saw the opportunity laid out in front of me on social media, and attending this info session really was my first path to Reset, and meeting everybody virtually in the middle of a pandemic year and not really seeing anyone in person. It took me, I think, 2-3 months before I got to see everybody in person who I'll be working with here when we organized last year's camp. It was astonishing, really. It definitely is a huge leap of faith, not trying to sort of discourage you from joining. What I will say is that it has been a very welcoming experience since day one. And the people here really have been transformative figures in my life, and I'm very grateful for that. it's worth it, and it's definitely a little bit odd, especially if you're just coming in new for the first time. But not to worry, we don't bite. We're all great people in here, and yeah, that was my experience last year.
Thanks, T-Money. Rain, do you want to add anything to that? And if not, it's okay.
Yeah, I guess I would just add, definitely after COVID there were some nerves, and not knowing about camp and what was involved with that, there were some nerves. But after the orientation, you know, it's a few hours of being with everybody, and I just remember kind of how full my heart felt and how excited I was just to get to know these people more. So it's absolutely worth it. It was transformative for me too, to be involved and to meet this community. And honestly, my number of friends has probably tripled since starting this and getting involved. So like, even for that, if you're yes, I'll stop there. But just it's been incredible. And I think another thing is just we all learn as we go. It's such a collaborative, creative process. And yeah, it's a learning journey. So it's safe. It's a safe process.
Cool. Thanks for sharing.
Mm.
I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll bring back up the slide deck. I'm curious to know, for all of us, myself included, just like a highlight or two from camp that you'd want to share, just to kind of illustrate, yeah, your own experience and some of the things people can look forward to. And again, I'm happy to go first. In thinking about this question, I immediately started thinking about Hammock Haven. So last year, a couple of our campers, Rise and Zip, asked if they could literally like get 40 hammocks and then put them all in the same area, and they built this like hammock tower and like different hammock zones, and it was amazing. It was super whimsical, and I think the reason why it stands out is it became such a beautiful embodiment of our emphasis on rest. And because some people could also like swing from hammock to hammock, it also became this beautiful embodiment of play too. And yeah, and it just stuck out to me as like one of the infrastructure elements that really made camp last year. So that's one of the things that stuck out for me. PT, let's go over to you.
Yeah, I've had the privilege of being at camp every year since the beginning. And so for me, it was, you know, there's that break during COVID. So to be able to see all the friendly faces and strangers being friends with, you know, new strangers as well. With that moment when we do our opening, I won't spoil it, but we do an opening exercise in the first night. And to see everybody, you know, mixing and mingling and having conversations and dancing together, all the different activities that we kind of do as part of our opening, that moment for me was just very much reminiscent of all the past camps, and brings back the flooding of all these emotions. And so that immediately settles me into the camp environment and settles me into, you know, the reset that happens for me every year, and hopefully for some for the first time, and for some others a running back, so to speak.
That's good foreshadowing for a future slide prime time. Thank you. Rain, over to you.
My mind goes to Dance With You thing, which I just thought was such an incredible moment where we were at the waterfront, and it's an invitation to dance with an object that you bring. So it could be anything. It could be a pot, it could be a fly swatter, both of which were there. And what's really wonderful about, or what was really wonderful about that moment, is everybody was able to absolutely be themselves, and the focus on the object allowed them to kind of get rid of potentially some of the nerves that they might have been feeling, to be dancing with other people. And then as that was happening, there was this really incredible, you know, folks were journaling or reading or chanting, like meditating, whatever they needed to do if they felt introvert, or if they were introverted and needed some quieter time. Others were like just communicating and having conversations by the fires, which was really cool. So just all of that was kind of happening at the same time. And it was such a special moment that, we had planned for some specific programming, but there was just this organic movement and this organic meeting of needs in that moment for whoever kind of arrived in that moment in time.
Thanks for sharing that. And I'll add some commentary, or rather, I think like underline one of the points you made there, as it related to probably one of the biggest areas of growth for us last year was being more considerate of experiences for folks who identify as introverted or just require introverted space. And what that looked like, to Rain's illustration, was like sometimes offering multiple activities at the same time, but also like centering opportunities and celebrating opportunities for people to be in solitude, to be quiet, or just to not have to exert much. I think a lot about the sanctuary, which our care team, led by Care Bear, put together, is a really good example of that. Amongst other things that we've done, also programmatically, again, just to ensure that there's some people who really like to be in the extroverted space, and some in the introverted, and some are ambiverted, and trying to hold a programming scheme that like creates opportunities for everyone across that spectrum was like just a big area of growth for us last year. So thanks for sharing that example. T-Money, over to you.
Thanks, Moonlight. So many moments to choose from, but for me, I think really the highlight is the journey itself. As Dill had mentioned earlier, camp was in hiatus throughout the pandemic up until last year when we restarted things, and thus the formation, the birth of the collective. And if I understand, about half of the people who joined the collective last year are new to Reset in general. And as I had mentioned earlier, we all met virtually. And from day one up until camp, it wasn't really up until camp night, the night before camp rather, where all of us were, even then there was a couple of people missing. It wasn't until camp day itself when all of us were in the same room for the first time in person, going through the motions from the anxiety coming out of the pandemic, peak pandemic at least, of just being locked down through the various stages of lockdowns, meeting everyone virtually. Everybody was exhausted in terms of burnout. Certainly, it was struggle, at least for me. Definitely a lot of anxiety prior to joining Reset, but just looking back, I couldn't really believe that we made things happen last year. Camp was very successful. We nearly had 200 people attend. And all of that really started from sometime in February, March of 2022, when we all met virtually, and half of us joining in for the first time. What an unbelievable journey that was, and an experience, really. Got to meet a lot of people within the collective. All of them are really good friends of mine now, and it's just really amazing to see. And that's my highlight from camp last year. And I mean, even then, I can pull from many memories from camp itself, but I'll save that for later.
Awesome. Okay, let's move back to this deck. See. So we left here on the slide. What's the same-ish? We refer to the majority of our team returning. We're heading back to Walden. I want in a moment to just get a sense from anyone who'd like to share what you liked about Walden. There will be more. I mentioned again, like the opportunities for people to volunteer. All these things that I think have already come up. Maybe even you. Maybe you're coming back. I want to come back to the Walden piece. So a bit of context, Reset has never gone to the same location twice, other than Ecology, the Ecology Retreat Center when we first started. So we did our first 2 years there. But after that, we moved into summer camps, and we had great experiences with each one. but for different reasons, we never got to return to the same one. So this is the first time we're ever returning to the same camp, which is a really exciting piece, especially as it relates to planning, because now we just are able to optimize our workflow a lot more with the sense of what we're working with. But I want to pass it over to the rest of you. We're heading back to Walden. How do you feel? What did you like about it? Anything you'd like to share? And PT, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I honestly had a great time working with the Walden staff, the Walden team. It felt like a great integration of our team with their team. I know it's probably very cliche, but it did really feel like a family vibe with their team. And then again, with our team kind of integrating to them, it really did feel very cohesive. It's the most support I feel like I've had, or I felt from a full production side of it, from their team being able to help with a lot of like setups and a lot of teardowns and just helping us move gear around. So from a production standpoint, I think that was invaluable. There's no monetary value that we could place on that. So really appreciative to their team and really appreciative of that we get to come back and get to run it back from there as well.
Like that foreshadowing again. We'll come back to that. Rain, you want to throw anything into this one?
I would love to, yeah. Just to give a bit of an outline of the camp itself. Like we're talking about like a 750-acre property where they have their own private lake. The cabins can fit up to, I think it was up to 10 people, but we typically had placed kind of 6 people in there. So lots of space for everybody. Most of the cabins have washrooms, and there's fridges in the counselor cabins. So there's access to some refrigeration. The dining hall, I think, seats like 850 people. So we're not talking about, a small space. We're talking about a really beautifully resourced, and not just from the facilities aspect, but also to what PT was talking about from the staffing aspect. They were incredible. It's a really magic place, beautiful nature. I'm super stoked that we're going back there.
Awesome. Timoni, do you want to add anything, or we can keep moving if not?
Yeah, just a couple more things to add, please, though.
Yeah, please.
So many activities you can do at Camp Walden. As Jen had mentioned, it's roughly about 700 hectares, or is it acres? Acres, apologies. Truly a choose your own adventure style. If you want water sports, you can go canoeing, kayaking if you like. I believe they have some paddle boards in there as well. There's a giant water slide you can take and dip right into the lake. And they have a little island right in that lake where you can canoe as well. You can go hiking in the woods. You can go mountain biking with the trails that they have set up over there. Basketball courts, volleyball, you name it, they most likely have it. So I'm very excited to go back to that same place with so many activities that I can choose from.
Awesome. There's so many other things we could potentially add, but maybe just the other one I don't know if any of you mentioned, so I just want to make sure I surface is food. Walden has an excellent kitchen, and really importantly was able to meet every single one of the food needs and preferences that we shared with them last year. Just like it's so nice to show up and just be taken care of by their team. And so yeah, we're heading back to Walden. Okay, so what's different this year? So I'm gonna treat this slide a little bit differently, and I want to see amongst the three of you, are any of these bullet points here ones that you want to specifically speak to, other than obviously the last one, which I think might make sense for me to just share that this is a really exciting part or moment for Reset as an organization. This will be the first year that there will not be a founder on the camp organizing team, let alone in one of the chair roles. And so part of the reason why this moment and this milestone is happening is because we are incredibly blessed to have PT, Rain, and T-Money all put their hands up to say that they wanted to lead, they wanted to co-lead camp this year. And so this is a really exciting moment for all of us. And again, we're really grateful for the three of you and your leadership. So I'll put a pause there. Any of these points that specifically any of you want to speak to?
I'll take a stab with the camera stuff. Item number 3, bullet point number 3. All right, so this year we are introducing a camera at camp. I know it sounds a little counterintuitive, especially since over the previous iterations of Reset and Camp Reset, rather, there were no cameras at all. There was no way for us to document anything. You had to be there, really. And this year we are introducing a camera at camp with consent. And the whole idea behind this is, and of course, we're going to be consulting with the collective, with the board, with the campers as well. We want to ensure that we are able to get some input from everybody who's going to be attending at camp. Mindful that this is meant to be a digital detox. It's something that we want to introduce this year to see if we can document a little bit of things for camp for marketing purposes, if I understand correct. And I think it will be, we're definitely going to be sensitive in terms of how we're going to be approaching this, and everything will be put with very thoughtful consideration before we do anything to set up the cameras at camp.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, T Money. Yeah, and to your question around the intent, the word that comes up for me is access. We've been able to do a lot of things with very little view into what the camp experience is like, and that's part of the magic. Like, you know, as T Money said, you kind of have to be there. At the same time, for some folks, it's hard to make a decision around whether camp would feel like a welcoming, belonging, or safe or joyful environment for them without some sense as to who's there and what happens there. And we have received that feedback over the years, that as much as people appreciate the lack of surveillance or documentation at camp, at the same time, it creates a challenge around their ability to access camp. So we're going to introduce a camera this year. It will not be everyone. It'll be a specific documentarian. And as T Money mentioned, we're going to go through a process to get consultation and consent from people who attend, recognizing that not everyone who attends, not everyone will like this decision, and it might mean someone might decide to not attend camp this year, which sucks. And we feel that. But our hope is that by making more access in the long term, that it kind of balances out a bit of that suckiness there. PT or Rain, any of the other points here that you want to speak to or elaborate on a little bit further?
Yeah, like I can jump in on the first two, because I do think they're pretty well connected. I think the first thing that we're doing to better center the care is just having changing up our structure so that we do have this co-chair structure. We can support each other, which is so important. We can take some of the stuff off your plate, which is also very important. And then we also are able to make sure that the other directors of the collective have support that they need on a more one-to-one or a smaller group basis. So I think that's a first important step. Another thing that we're focusing on this year is running it back. So we feel like we had a successful formula last year. We have some incredible people from the collective rejoining. And so we're really going to try to sort of keep that formula in place, see what we can do with programming to keep what was really successful, take the feedback that we'd received so thoughtfully from all of the campers that attended last year and try to put some of that feedback into place or implement some of that feedback to address some of the things from last year that we could have improved upon. So without having to reinvent the wheel. So I think it's going to be just a really good year, really good learning process. And in that kind of way that we're running back, we have started discussions on what we can do to implement some really important processes that maybe weren't in place last year that will also help to take some of the challenges away.
Thanks, Rain. PT, is there anything you want to build on?
I'm good. We can keep it flowing.
Cool. Maybe just a couple quick things to add. In case anyone is curious about the how may we do 82% less work, the 82% isn't actually like a real number. It's more just like a kind of a whimsical, not whimsical. What's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like it's a bit facetious just to pick the number, but the idea is to just continually prompt ourselves to just think about how do we work smarter, not necessarily harder, and to echo Rain, like how do we center care more in our design? And part of care is to not actually the people running it to spend their entire times working. And then the only other thing I want to add here is that the budgets piece. So if you are interested in applying, in the documentation that we've shared, we've linked to the budget, or at least the forecast for the year, so you can get a sense of what the budget looks like, and what each portfolio has, and what that looks like relative to last year. Just as a high, overarching disclaimer, there's not, the budgets are like relatively thin, like they're not robust on account of the fact that we're a relatively small organization, and but our hope is that based on our learnings, it's enough for you to do what you need to do. So I'll move on from that, and I recognize I did the thing everyone says not to do, which is like at the beginning say this will be roughly around half an hour, and I'm pretty sure we're close to that, if not a little bit beyond that. But here we are. My bad. Should have managed expectations better. Speaking of expectations, so just some things that have already been mentioned. This is a volunteer position with a 1-year term. We communicate primarily through Slack, and that we provide training, but we also in whom we recruit to the team are looking for professional lived experiences. With events and experiences that has some parallels to Reset, and that you can attend meetings. And we're going to talk a little bit about the time commitment in the next slide, I believe. Oh, it's the slides after. Just the benefits. I think everyone here has kind of shared a little bit about the impact that Reset has had on them. But of course, a lot of us, and if not all of us, are doing this in order to be in service to the community. I just want to throw up all these different testimonials in terms of like the impact it's had. But we have not had testimonials over the years because of the whole no cameras thing. We did try it last year for the first time. Shout out to Leaf and Five for capturing that. But the audio, the audio didn't come through as well as we'd hoped. Lots of opportunities for learning. I think Rain spoke a little bit to that as well. And then there's the $2,000 honorarium, which we provide. And we mentioned this as well, that we recognize that the amount of love and labor and leadership that people are providing on the collective is not it does not equate to $2,000 in value. We're not attempting to do that because we actually don't have the resources to equate the full value. The honorarium is a way to which we can express our gratitude, and every year we're trying to figure out ways that we can increase the amount of ways that we can express our gratitude to the people who organize camp. And so just for context, last year, the amount of the honorarium was $1,250. So we're moving in towards more opportunities for reciprocation, and of course, free membership to the Reset Center. So this is a general sense on time commitment, and just to give you a sense, May to September is obviously when things are busier as we lead up to camp. And then after camp, we still spend time together because we spend time in reflection, in post-event reconciliation of like expenses and learnings and evaluation, etc. But I want to get a sense from, you know, folks here, if anyone wants to share a little bit about your feelings around the time commitment and what are the things that are really helpful for people to know when making a decision to join the collective.
Okay, I'll jump in just quick here. So I would say, as you can see from the hours outlined, like we do start somewhat slow. So it's about a bi-weekly meeting, I think is what would be typical for our processes. And as we get closer to camp, we move to a weekly meeting. And then typically on top of that, we collaborate pretty closely with each other on the collective, which is one of the beautiful things about this, which means you probably will have a couple of meetings throughout the week as well on top of those weekly meetings closer to camp.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. I would say like, unless Timon, do you have anything you wanted to contribute to this part? Okay, I'll just jump in here. I think like the other thing to say about time is to acknowledge that we can quantify the time commitment based on like the time you spend in meetings or planning. But what we can't really quantify is the time and the energy you spend thinking about it, feeling it. Even if I think about like my own experience after camp, the amount of time I spend in like reflection or processing or integration, it's I just can't quantify that time. And I think it's just like really important to acknowledge like the reason why we're sharing this slide is to give you some sort of compass around the fact that this is a time commitment, and you should know that. And even that these numbers that we're providing don't actually reflect the full time, because there's gonna be time where it's just like, you know, in you and you're during your day, and obviously that time is different for each individual, and some of us are better than others with compartmentalizing. But yeah, just to acknowledge that there's also that invisible time. There's also the relational time, which again it's hard to really account for. If you're having a conflict with someone, that takes energy to not just work through internally, but with that individual. And so these are elements of time that don't necessarily show up on this slide, but are important to just acknowledge upfront as realities of being as a part of the collective. Okay, so I'll keep moving. On the topic of timeline. So obviously, I mean, I say obviously, but I'm assuming you're going to see this in March or April, which is when applications and recruitment are happening. And then we go into planning stages thereafter. And as mentioned, you know, this phrase running back has come up a few times. This idea that like we're going to implement a lot of the things that we implemented last year and build upon those systems rather than trying to create a lot of new. Certainly the programming, though, it will feel different if you're coming to camp, but a lot of the structures and systems will remain the same. And yeah, and that's the flow for the year. I think this slide is pretty self-explanatory. Anyone here, is there anything missing or anything you would want to just highlight a little bit further? No? Cool. Okay. I think that brings us almost to the end. This is the last slide. So just in terms of the process, Team Money, there's that missing period. We before this thing, we're like, there's a period missing, and we went through the whole deck, and as soon as the slide just came out, now I'm like, there it is. So we acknowledge our grammar could have been better here. And so there should be a period there, but please read our everything doc, which we share as part of the application, which has like as much information, probably mainly, maybe even overwhelming amount of information. But again, we really want to make sure that we provide as much info up front so you can make an informed decision about applying. Then there's the application form, and then our goal is to have conversations with everyone. With that said, if we have an overwhelming response, because we will try our best to meet everyone, but because we also have limited capacity, If that doesn't happen, we will let you know. At the very least, we will reach out to everyone to let everyone know about, as things play out. And if there are any ways that we can make the process more accessible or joyful for you, please let us know. Thank you. Thank you for reaching the end of this presentation. And I think like what we might just do is like a final part of it is maybe just just see if anyone here has anything you think that we missed that would be good for people to know. Anything that you said that you're like, actually, I think I might have want to say that a little bit differently. Anything else? Any final thoughts from anyone?
Just wanted to add, I know we kind of discussed it before we actually jumped on recording here, is the asynchronous like workflow. So don't feel like you're committed to a very corporate style organization. We don't need answers within an hour. We kind of generally ask questions with the expectation that it might take a day, it might take, a few hours. It depends on the actual timing that you work jobs. We all do other things outside of this organization. So, don't feel that there's pressure to have to commit to a thing and then have to answer questions right away or provide answers to questions that are asked of you right away. We work as a team and we work with flow, and it's not always going to be an immediate kind of situation. Sometimes it takes a few days, and sometimes it just kind of works itself out so that the answers come when the answers need to be there. So I think that was super important when we were doing our pre-recording, and I think it's super important that we highlight that in this conversation as well.
Great point. Thanks, Primetime. T-Money Rain, any final thoughts, words, additions, changes?
Wondering if we want to reiterate the onboarding day. So we do have an onboarding day coming up. There's a hope that if you apply, you'll be able to be there with us. But certainly we can appreciate that that's not always accessible for everybody. So that will be April 29th or 30th. So if you could be available, that would be wonderful.
Thanks, Rain. T-Money?
Yes, I'm just reminded by my own brain. The timeline slides earlier. I do just want to acknowledge that the planning stage is between May until August, and it's right in between. It's right over the summer. Just mindful of any commitments that you have potentially have made for summer. I do acknowledge it's been, it's been a winter for some people as well, and summer is that time of the year where everybody gets to go out, and just managing your expectations, your commitment into the work as well that we're doing in here. That's it.
Do we want to end with a hang of the fives?
Ooh, yeah, it's a great idea. Shout out, Paradise.
Yeah, let's shout. I think that's a good moment here to shout out our fellow collective members. The Hang of the Fives was introduced to us from Paradise, who is our director of program. Who else can we want to make sure we shout out? Bliss, who's our director of marketing. Hummingbird, our director of story.
Shout out.
Care Bear, our director of care. And
Ziva,
our managing director, who makes sure everyone gets paid and things get reimbursed. And I think that is everyone.
Our wonderful board.
Oh my God, board love. Auntie Awake, Soapy, Shira, GiggleFit. Our board is growing, so by the time you see this, there might be more people on the board. And also shout out to our collective members who are transitioning into being campers. So I think that we have Butter, Five, and Leaf. And I think I can just keep going. I want to shout out this. Let's go back, Rain, to your instinct to Hang of the Five, so we can close this.
All right. Power up. 3, 2, 1.
Bye all.
Bye, everybody.